Hey everyone, welcome to a special session of the API3 community call. And for this one, we have Kleros in as our special guest and me, Midhav, as your host. I've decided to replace Ugur for this session because he's busy on the back end handling this, So to begin with, I think we should start off by introducing all the participants. And I think you all already know everyone who's already been in these calls for the past couple of weeks. But I should start off by introducing them anyway, since I'm kind of new to this as well. And to begin with, we have our co-founders, Burak and Sasa, as well as our business development lead, Dave. And on top of that, we have our special guests, Federico and Clement. And I'd like you all to introduce yourselves one by one, starting with the guys at Kleros, of course.
Yeah, so I'm one of the founder of Kleros and TTO, and we'll be working with API3 on the insurance mechanism.
Hello guys, I'm Federico Ast. I am CEO and co-founder at Kleros. I'm very happy to be here, and I have to say it's pretty spectacular. You know, the opening sequence you have. You set the bar very high for our own, community calls in the future.
Yeah, you'd have to thank Ugur for that, but yeah, he isn't around, but yeah. So the next question I'd have to ask you guys is, what is Kleros? Could you elaborate on that?
Sure, we have a presentation about this, so let's put this on.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, Kleros. Okay, next slide, please. So, as you know, we're all building together this new internet, this Web3 ecosystem, which is meant to let's say, replace a bunch of apps from the Web2 world. Next one, please. And this has a big problem, which is, that smart contracts are very smart in some way, but there are situations which require some interpretation, some ambiguity, because there is some human elements involved there, and you need some human intervention to solve them, right? Next one. And smart contracts are smart enough for self-executing as they are programmed, but they can't really solve these subjective situations, and this can become a very big obstacle for the development of all the Web3 ecosystem. Next one, please. So, a short example, let's imagine Alice and Bob make an agreement and a smart contract in order to, she hires Bob to build some website for her. That's one. And so let's say that they make an agreement and she puts some the payment for his services into a smart contract, and then what happens if there is a dispute about the quality of the work, right? Smart contracts cannot really solve this. So in order to provide a layer of human evaluation for this situation, they both agree that they are going to use an arbitrator, which is called Kleros. So next one, please. So if there is no dispute, everything is fine, the payment is done and everyone is happy. But let's say now there is a dispute, so the funds stay locked into this smart contract that acts as an escrow, And then Kleros is going to select a number of jurors who are going to evaluate the evidence, and they're going to vote, each of them independently, on the dispute at hand. And based on what they vote, this is going to enforce to provide the smart contract some information that's going to tell it reimburse Alice or pay Bob. Right. Next one, please. So in this case, the jurors vote that Alice was right because Bob didn't comply with what was expected from him in this contract, so she gets back the funds. And this is how Kleros can solve a situation where there was some subjectivity involved and that where smart contracts were not enough just for solving it. Next one, please. Of course, a big question that you might be asking, okay, who are these guys, the jurors, and how do you select them? Next one. Let's say this woman, she's designer from Vietnam, and she has a job as a designer in the company, and then she wants to make some extra money on the side after work, and she wants to be a juror at Kleros. And in order to be be a juror, you need to have this token called PNK. It's an ERC20 token that gives you the possibility to be drawn as a juror in disputes happening in Kleros. It's kind of a lottery ticket that you have to deposit. Next one, please. Into a court within Kleros. Kleros is a system that has many different courts for different purposes and different situations. And let's say that in this case there was a court of freelancing, website freelancing, and so this woman deposits the token into this court. Next one, please. And lots of other people also deposit the token, and the fact of having the token staked into the court gives you the possibility of being drawn as a juror in cases in that court. Next one, please. And let's say in this case we have 5 jurors drawn in this dispute, and these people are going to have the right to be to vote on who is right in this case, and they're going to also get some arbitration fee for the work they are going to do. Next one, please. So a big question. Okay, how do you make that incentives work? Right, these people are anonymous. They don't have to prove that they have the right skills in order to make the decision that they're going to make. So, and this is one of the main innovations that Kleros brings into the table, which is the next one, please. The use of economic incentives in order to provide the adequate framework for the system to work. Kleros is based on the work by this economist called Thomas Schelling, Nobel Prize in Economics 2005. Next one, please. And he is famous because of the development of many things within game theory, but of particular what matters here is the concept of focal points. That is about how people coordinate when they have to make a decision which is going to be in coordination with other agents and with which they cannot coordinate, they cannot communicate, or they don't trust them, right? So let's just give an example here. Next one, please. So if I ask to everyone in this call to pick one of these 12 numbers with the incentive of trying to pick the same number that the majority is going to pick, and you cannot communicate with the rest. So empirically, it's a fact that most people will choose the 1,000 just because it looks more natural for everyone to coordinate into that place. So this means that the 1,000 in this scenario is the Schelling point in this case. Next one, please. So if you put a number of people who are going to evaluate the same piece of evidence with having the same piece of skill set, and they have to try to make a decision that is going to be coherent with the majority decision about this. So the incentive that they have is try to coordinate in the Schelling point, and this Schelling point is going to be the truth about the dispute at hand, right? The truth in a consensual, sense, the consensual, what the community thinks that the truth, so that the right decision is in this dispute that they have at hand. Next one, please. And then after this dispute happens and after this decision is made, so there is a redistribution of of tokens that go from the people who were coherent to people who were incoherent to the coherent. Like the people who staked the token and made a minority decision, they lose the token, and this is sent to the jurors who made a coherent decision. And the losing party in this dispute, in this case Bob, who made this bad website, is going to lose the money that was in the escrow, right? And it's going to pay to the coherent jurors. Next one, please. So the mechanism is more complex. There is an appeal system. But this is a very simplified version for like a couple of minutes. But but the main point here is that the way in which Kleros works is that it creates a set of incentives where users that try to game the system, like voting randomly, for example, or like taking bribes, they are going to like tend to lose the token that they stake in the court. And so this over time, on average, they are going to lose more money than what they make. So they're going to like exit the system. And next one, please. And on the contrary, honest users who analyze the evidence and they make a well-thought decision, they're going to be more on the majority side than on the minority side. And so they're going to make money as they, arbitrate cases, right? So this is how Kleros aligns, the economic incentive of jurors with them, like providing fair rulings to disputes. Next one, please. So what is the role that Kleros aims to fill within the Web3 ecosystem? Kleros is a court where we want all of these different apps, all of the different DAOs that have some requirement for solving subjective situations, to like just send the dispute to Kleros, and Kleros will send back a decision made in this fair way, in its neutral way. Next one, please. It's kind of like justice as a service, if you want, kind of situation, right? So where Kleros is being used now is the main use cases are basically linked to curation situations. Like, for example, there's an app called Tokens, where the jurors, what they do is like they verify tokens that are submitted, and they check if these tokens comply with a number of guidelines made by the community, like not being scams or not being like Ponzi's or etc. Next one, please. Another very interesting use case from the curation perspective is an app we launched 2 months ago, and which got lots of traction. It's a proof of humanity app where it's based on the same mechanism as the tokens one, but instead of submitting tokens, you submit your profile, and the rest of the community will check if you are a human and that you are not duplicate human in this registry. All of the registered humans, they get dripped a UBI token. So if you haven't yet submitted your profile, please be our guest and make part of this list. Next one, please. Another very important use case is resolving disputes in the context of prediction markets. So, for example, there was a prediction market in Omen where the situation was, how many deaths there were reported in the US in July, in the first 15 days of July of 2020. And, some sources said less than 1,000, I don't remember the exact number, and some said more. So when, depending on what you accept as the truth here, well, this is going to clear the market. So you need a dispute resolution mechanism that is going to resolve who is right and which side wins. And this is going to, trigger the payments in this market. Another very, very big use case, case we had in the prediction market oracles situation is, who won the U.S. election, Biden or Trump? The last December we had this situation, and some people said that the market was invalid because they said that there is the electoral college didn't still vote that Biden won, but the other said but when this this bet was made, the spirit was that who is going to, so it's fair that Biden, it's apparently because all of the court presentations made by Trump were denied, so it's fair that Biden won. So this kind of situation where there is a situation where you need some dispute resolution in the context of an oracle to make sure that the payments that are triggered by the prediction market are going to be fair. So that's a very important use case of Kleros at the moment. And this brings us, next one please, to present you a bit what is the Kleros ecosystem now. If I gave this talk like 6 months ago, we will have like way less bubbles here, and this is all of the apps that are getting connected into Kleros and that are going to are already using Kleros as their justice as a service provider, and we are very happy. Next one, please. The reason that brings us here together now is to discuss a bit of one of the bubbles that is going to join very soon this ecosystem, which is a very happy partnership with AP3, and I will let you guys continue with this.
Thanks a lot for that summary, Federico. I should add also that Omen intends to use API3 down the line as well, in addition to Kleros. Like the subjectivity and objective oracles is what it aims to have on its plate. So that would bring us to our next question, which is how exactly we met Kleros and API3. And for that, I think I'll just let Sasha go first because she wanted to go about this. And if Burak wants to chime in, yeah, go ahead. But then you guys can also go ahead after they're done, and I'll chime in with how I met you guys too as well. So yeah, Sasha, go ahead.
Yeah, so this isn't a direct answer to the question, but I thought it'd be can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I thought it'd be an interesting little story. Also, Midhav, can you mute yourself? Yeah.
That isn't me.
Oh, it's not you? Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, I thought it'd be a little interesting story because I think everyone on the team knows I was actually a big fan of Kleros before I ever worked in crypto. And the reason is I'll try to keep it short. I was actually, when I was renting in New York, and I think anyone who's ever rented in New York knows how much of a pain in the ass it is, especially security deposits, because it's really easy for landlords to make something up and say you made damages and then not give you back your security deposit. It's such a common problem. It happened to me. So I was thinking it would be amazing if there was a smart contract where you like submit images and videos of the apartment before you rent, and then submit images and videos after you rent. And then somehow the smart contract pays out, who gets the security deposit. And I remember thinking like, well, how do you even get that data? Like that's like some sort of like computer vision. Like how do you even do that? And then I forgot about it. And then I heard about Kleros a couple of months later, and I was like, oh, that's the thing. Like that's how you get like this kind of subjective thing about was there, in this example, like was there damages or not? So it was like I saw this problem and I'm like, how do you even do this? And then a couple of months later, I read about Kleros and I was like, well, that's the thing. I started reading the white paper and a lot of the blogs, and I just think it's such an excellent project. And I think you guys have some of the most interesting work related to like pure game theory. Like there's a lot of cool tech in the space, but in terms of like really, really like hardcore game theory, I think you guys do like a lot of good work in that area. So that's just what I wanted to say before, like, how did we actually meet? I don't know who wants to answer that.
Yeah, I can mention, like, I think we all met in different ways. So we first, I think we were talking with Sasha, like while writing the white paper about like the Kleros is pretty cool, etc. Maybe not specifically in the context of API3. But then also, essentially, we were trying to come up with a staking model that would ideally punish who is responsible. But then we started thinking about like, what if we can also compensate who has suffered the damages? So maybe not only burn tokens, but implement some kind of an insurance service using that. And then, yeah, we already know about Kleros, like pretty solid project, pretty much perfect for this. So, and then we started incorporating that into the white paper. So at that point, the staking model was like, it had two aspects. So one was punishing and one was the insurance. And then I remember like getting Clement's opinion about the white paper, and then essentially like it was pretty good feedback in that the insurance version made a lot more sense and the alternative didn't as much. So it essentially, I think, shaped how the white paper turned out to be. So I think Kleros ended up having like a huge impact in how API3 was designed.
Federico, would you like to go, or either of you, Clement or Federico?
I will let Clement comment a bit about, so I've spoken enough already.
Yeah, so we met at, I don't even remember where we met the first time. I think it was because we were in the DXDAO. Yeah, I think it probably was with DXDAO. And yeah, and so I got shown the white paper of API3 and made a bunch of comments. And that's how we started to work together. And we kept in touch playing Age of Empires together.
Yeah, I know that's interesting because I don't even remember when we met, but I do know how our relationship got stronger, and that was by playing Age of Empires.
No. You guys are mistaken. That's how we met. We met by playing Age of Empires. Like you guys hosted that event where we were going to have the Age of Empires, matches for everyone, all the teams in crypto, and I showed up over there, and then Dave also showed up. Then we started talking to you in DXDAO. So you're completely right. Come on.
Well, Age of Empires is like the golf of our time for business. That's the thing.
For crypto, yeah.
Golf for crypto.
I mean, I personally noted that a lot of people, almost a lot of people that I've surveyed, pretty substantial percentage of the people that I've surveyed since 2017 have at least played Age of Empires 2 once in their childhood. So it just seems to have some sort of causation, I guess, on correlation. But also to add something further, I mean, it got strengthened, yes, by the fact that we played it quite often. And the boar hunting, that was the most important part, of course. Yeah, I taught Federico how to hunt boars, as he's repeated several times before.
I have to say that you telling me how to kill a boar in Age of Empires, increased my ability in Age of Empire by a factor of 10x. So that I'm going to be thankful forever for that.
I know, right? This is going to improve your golfing abilities from here on. Yeah. Wait, Dave, do you want to chime in too?
Yeah, I think I just want to agree with everything you've just said, Midhav, that it kind of is how we met Kleros, and it's just an example of how even when you have globally distributed teams, it's still possible to network and to get together and to meet people and to have fun. And it's important, I think, in distributed projects to try to generate a sense of community and a sense of togetherness. And it's funny that it happened to be a 20-year-old computer game that did that between our projects. But yeah, I'd never played it before I joined the Crypto Games channel, and now I'm still rubbish, but I enjoy playing it.
I'd agree with that. But just to add for something further, if anyone else wants to join in on these games, you're free to do it. It happens every Wednesday in the evening, and you can just contact Federico, DM him on Discord and find out the invite for the Telegram. And yeah, I'm sorry, I meant to push everyone your way. But then you can join us every Wednesday in playing these games, though I won't be around that as often from now on. But yeah, so that should take us to our next question, since I think we've provided our answers on this. This is for you, Sasha, and Burak, and I guess even the Kleros team. But I'll start with Sasha. What is this partnership all about? What does it entail?
Yeah, I'll get into, actually the next question I get into a specific example, but this question I'll just stay high level. When you're dealing with oracles, regardless of your architecture, at some point you have to somehow detect faulty oracles. And this is essentially something like outlier detection for those familiar with statistics. And that is extremely difficult to program on the protocol level. I would even argue it's impossible, just because the types of distributions are infinite, and to hard code something like outlier detection is, again, I'd argue impossible. And anyone that does statistics or data science knows that it's a bit of an art. It's not just a science. Some of it is looking at data and using the right tools for the context. So there's very much of an art and a subjectivity to something like data science. So it's absolutely, in my opinion, necessary to have some sort of subjective layer in the architecture. I'll get into a specific example next, but that's kind of the high level reasoning if anyone else wants to add anything.
I do. So I'll again go a bit high level. So how do you do Oracle staking is a pretty difficult problem. And obviously the reason you want to do staking is you want to detect the issues with the reports. So I'd say that, like, as Sasha said, doing it statistically doesn't make any sense, because if you can verify if an answer is correct or not, you would have already done it. So now that you have used all of your resources to report something on chain, now you need to detect if it was true or not. So let's say you have 7 different oracles, and then you have a decentralized oracle network out of those. You have a data feed, for example, and then they reported something, and now you want to detect if that is correct or not. So one thing that essentially you should be using, again, an oracle to cross-check that. So what you can do is you can ask the same 7 oracles again, which doesn't make any sense, obviously. Like, that is a naive solution. That wouldn't work, because if they have colluded, they will collude again. Alternatively, you can ask, instead of 7, like 30 oracles, which is the Chainlink 2.0 solution. This also doesn't make much sense, because one, why wouldn't you use the larger number of oracles instead, which would work especially if you're using a sidechain or doing some off-chain networking between these oracle nodes. And secondly, if you think about the recent exploit, let's say, where Chainlink was reporting from an illiquid market, and they essentially reported the API source correctly, but the aggregated result ended up incorrect. And then, so if you then went and asked that to 30 different oracles, they would again use the same API providers, and they would come up with the same answer. So your answer would be, again, correct, which is like the manipulated market price. So at that point, so the problem there is you are validating the result of an objective oracle with an objective oracle. But at that point, now you need subjective oracles. So was that a problem or not? For example, was Chainlink at fault or not is debated on Twitter, but it essentially is a justice issue. Like, someone needs to decide on that subjectively, and it should be crowdsourced somehow. And another way of looking at it is, Kleros is, in my mind, is just a subjective oracle more than an arbitration protocol. So it is just an oracle that we cross-check our own oracle. And then the difference is, objective oracles are a lot more efficient in that they spend less gas overall per answer, and then they respond a lot faster, versus subjective oracles provide a lot of security, but they require longer times to resolve. So what you can do is you can fall back to a subjective oracle to cross-check your objective oracle and have the best of both worlds. So I think the two are very, they complement each other a lot.
So you guys can also add your thoughts, Federico and Clement, about this.
Yeah, I think Burak explained it quite well. You have this kind of like dilemma between having something which is fast and secure. And here, with the way the partnership work, you will get something which is fast, not necessarily that secure, but then you get an insurance inside. So if something like bad happen by the oracle, well, first, like people who stake on those oracle can be penalized. So you have extra incentive for those oracle to behave correctly, and people who suffer from some loss can be compensated via the insurance system. So that's the whole like goal to take the best of both worlds. And normally Kleros should almost never be called. But the simple fact that it should be called is giving some trust into that either the oracle will work correctly or I will be compensated via the insurance pool. And give incentives and incentivize the oracle to behave honestly. And I say honestly in like really large sense. So it's about also making sure they have proper key management, they have secure infrastructure. So maybe the oracle may be honest but get compromised. In this case, I will consider it as a dishonest oracle in terms of how the system is working.
For me, it's a good kind of new application of Kleros into securing what in the end is the decentralized finance ecosystem, right? At some point I think maybe AP3 will never have to use Kleros, but the fact of Kleros being there, hopefully you don't have to use Kleros, but the fact of Kleros being there as a security mechanism, it makes the whole AP3 system like way more secure and way more trustful for people to use it, right? So that's I'd say some part of our vision is like Kleros like being working in the background in all of blockchain. People may not even know that Kleros is there, but Kleros is like securing a number of apps, making sure that if something goes wrong, there's going to be like as it was said, a subjective oracle for resolution.
I think part of what I see the value of Kleros bringing here is the ability to have a third-party protocol take care of the arbitration side as well. Because from a game theory point of view, you don't want to have to kind of trust the project that's supposed to be paying out and the governors whose stake is supposed to be paying out to arbitrate correctly on whether or not that stake is paid out. So it makes more sense to have an independent protocol judge that, I would say. Otherwise, you could argue that the governors would be incentivized if there was a big payout to vote against it, even though it would hurt them in the long term.
Good answers. So let's move on to the next question. Can you give us an example of when and how somebody would make a claim when they're using insurance provided by API3? I'll direct this to Sasha to begin with, and we can go on to the others after that.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad Clement and Federico mentioned the fact that you shouldn't actually be using Kleros all the time. Like it's kind of a last ditch kind of thing. And because this is kind of, it seems to me when I answer questions in Telegram, people seem to think every time there's an issue, it has to go to Kleros, and that takes at least a week. But that's actually not the case. So just for people to know, we provide insurance if there's if for whatever reason there's a faulty response from a data feed or from an error node. And if it's really clear, like there was an outage, there was some sort of an outage, like that's very clear. And I think the DAO would just pay the claim in that case. But I actually have an example where it's unclear, an example that might actually be escalated to Kleros. So that's what I'm going to go through. I was going to do slides, but I'll try to keep it a little bit informal. So this is the example I've had in mind since the white paper, and it's specifically about liquidations. So, and this is actually a really common hack in DeFi, where a liquidation is like a binary thing, like some pool of money gets liquidated or not at a certain price. So like one cent greater or less means there's no liquidation. So the liquidation is kind of a discontinuous function. And so with data feeds, prices come from different places. They're reported at different times. There's always a delay. Like with blockchain, there's always a delay. And prices change very quickly, especially in crypto. And then there's also the aggregation function the aggregation function also influences the result. So these are at least three factors that create variation in responses pre-aggregation. So there's sort of like an implicit confidence interval on the aggregated response, if that makes sense. So since it's a discontinuous function, the liquidation function, like it liquidates at a certain price, either less than or greater than, like it liquidates at a certain point, creating a discontinuous function. So minor variation from some true value can trigger a liquidation. So what if there's a liquidation that's triggered on some DeFi protocol at 2000 ETH, let's say we report 2000 ETH, it causes a liquidation, and then they argue, well, actually ETH was 2000.1 US dollars. Hopefully you understand what I mean. Like if the liquidation occurred and they can argue like, well, actually the true price according to something was like 1 cent more and there shouldn't have been a liquidation. Like that's actually a situation which might cause, create a dispute. Yeah, so it's not immediately obvious if the price that triggered the liquidation was actually in a reasonable range of acceptability. Like I said, because the pre-aggregated responses are not the same, there's some sort of variance. It's really not clear if the final price in a certain context was in an acceptable range. And this is extremely hard to predict ahead of time. This is what I said earlier. You can't build this into the protocol because it depends on so many things. For example, price volatility at the time. Like the more the price is volatile at the point of aggregation, the more variance you'll have. And this is just like one example. Like there's so many factors that you really can't kind of code in like some reasonable confidence interval prior in the protocol. So this is a situation I think is absolutely perfect for just crowdsourcing to a bunch of data scientists. And Kleros, correct me if I'm wrong, Kleros has a data analysis court. This seems like a perfect example where you give the data scientists all the data. Like this was the price volatility at the time. This was the reported price. This is what was liquidated. Like give them all the data, and then they can use based off their tools and a little bit of kind of subjective, the kind of art of data science, they can come to some agreement about was the price at liquidation actually in a reasonable range, or was it really off and a claim should be paid out. Hopefully that makes sense, but if anyone has questions, they can ask in the comments.
I think that makes like total sense, and this this is not a theoretical risk. You know, we've seen this happening. The thing that comes to mind now is the Black Thursday at Maker, right? There was a failure in price oracles, and this triggered a number of liquidations that maybe they shouldn't have happened, and this created a lot of problems for the protocol. So kind of this is a very real risk that is going to be even more and more real as more assets are sent into decentralized finance. So Kleros, well, as you were saying, such as Kleros is a system of course, and one of the courses that exists now is a data science course that we built that for an insurance pilot we did at some point in the past. This can be adapted, or we can another course can be created for jurors to answer specifically the kind of questions that would arise in the event of a problem like this in AP3. So definitely.
Does anyone else have anything else to add?
Yeah, I can. So I know that everyone is fixated on DeFi right now in the space, but I think in the context of insurance, I'm more excited about the use cases that don't exist yet, that depend on singular objective oracles, so API provider operated AR nodes. So right now, the only API providers that are being used are crypto asset price providers. So, but then there are a lot of businesses serving their data and services, and then a lot of these are not decentralizable. And then the good thing with that is they will not be used as heavily as the currently used data feeds. So right now a data feed covers hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, etc. But then these singular oracles will be securing, say, up to $100,000. So, and then since they are not decentralized by themselves, they will actually require insurance. You will want them to be insured if you want to use them. You wouldn't use it otherwise. And then this will enable a lot of use cases that wouldn't make much sense. So because you would be using a centralized oracle, but as soon as it is insured, now it has the exact same security guarantees that a decentralized version would do, with less of the gas costs. And if you also consider that it may not be decentralizable at all because there are no multiple API providers that provide that kind of data and services, then this enables a lot of use cases in the form of dApps that don't exist right now because like it doesn't have the required infrastructure. So this also allows that.
I think what you're referring to is like siloed data from industries like supply chain, I suppose.
Yeah, so for example, if you're getting data from a single source, and that is a first-party oracle, so it is pretty trustworthy, then API3 may want to ensure that. And then whoever is using that could say that this data source is in fact quantifiably secure up to this level. And then now we are not talking about millions of dollars in terms of insurance claim payouts, but rather much smaller amounts. And essentially the DAO is also implemented in that way that small claim payouts don't create additional gas costs at any step, so that we can pay out very small insurance claims as well.
Let me just comment something. Sasha said before that she came to know Kleros. She had thought about some solution like Kleros when she was renting in New York. She had this problem. One of the early things that made me think about also Kleros before even Kleros existed was I rented a car in the US, and you had this. I was reading this clause. If you crash your car, there's this insurance thing that happens. So how is this going to be resolved? This is a small claim, right? A small crash and for $200, and who should pay for this, right? There are tons of these kind of consumer disputes that I think they are going to move also to Web3 applications, and lots of insurance is going to be done more efficiently through smart contracts, especially in the context of parametric insurance. And this will require as well, some subjective oracle to decide on situations like this. So that's also a bit of a story, and we don't even know what the use cases will be in the future when this technology gets more advanced.
That brings me back to something that I knew and that I've heard of before, which is that you guys have some background in online dispute resolution. I think, you guys have some. Yeah, you've had some experience, even prior to Kleros, and I think that's the kind of use case that you're envisioning moving into Web3, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I think the goal is to use new technology in order to solve a new type of claims, and so do things differently. When people build the existing system for dispute resolution, traditional arbitration, let's call it, nobody was thinking, of blockchain or even of the internet, right? And but now we get all these digital disputes. This started before blockchain. It started, one of our good friends and community members is Colin Rule, who is he's typically considered the godfather of dispute resolution, online dispute resolution, and he's the guy who built the system at eBay, right? The user claim system at eBay, and he was trying to solve a problem that had not existed before, and he had to, start to see what technology can provide us a solution for problems coming from technology, right? And he came with this idea of crowdsourcing, right? Crowdsourcing, of course, it was not new. It was already used in different contexts. For example, Wikipedia crowdsourced the writing of an encyclopedia into the wisdom of the crowd. So when he had this situation where he had to solve 60 million disputes a year, and so his internal resolution team was not enough for that, because that would be a bottleneck. So he had this idea, okay, what if I use other users in order to resolve this? Because there are millions of eBay users, and so let's put all of this brain power into solving the disputes, right? So, but that had some problems still, because it still was a centralized process. It was kind of a black box. If you're an eBay user and you have a claim against another eBay user, still, eBay would tend to be in favor of the one that generates more revenue for the platform, right? Because it's not a decentralized platform, and they have a vested interest in how this will end. So kind of the application of Kleros and blockchain, and in particular a DAO, with the idea of crowdsourcing, you get a justice system which is very well adapted to to the problems we have now. This is a system that's going to work as it's intended to work, and that no one can tamper with, and jurors are going to be chosen as it's written in the code. And this kind of it's what's required in order to lots of these apps to work. And there's not another way, because if you solve this in a different way, you will probably introduce a single point of failure into a system, right? So that's kind of where it's coming from.
I think Sasha wants to chime in. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how many comments we have. If we don't have like a lot of questions, I actually do have questions for the Kleros team, or maybe this is more of a comment. I find it interesting when I read FUD about Kleros, it's usually stuff like, well, how do you know that the juries actually know, or the jurors actually know the subject matter? And it's funny that it's always like criticism that you could apply to the existing legal system. Like every criticism I've heard of Kleros, I feel like applies to the existing legal system. So I mean, maybe it's not a question, but I found it funny when I was debating Kleros with people, and it was like everything you're saying applies to existing legal systems. It's not specific to Kleros.
I will leave Clement answer this one, I think, because he's the mastermind of the mechanism design.
Yeah, like so you have an incentive into staking court you are knowledgeable about, because if you tend to be coherent with the final result, you tend to win some PNK and arbitration fees, while if you tend to be incoherent with the final result, you tend to lose PNK. So if you are staking courts you know nothing about, either you're going to take a lot of time to learn the subject and be coherent, or you're going to be more incoherent than average jurors, and so you're going to lose some money or win less compared to being in another court. So it's like a system which is automatically incentivizing people to stake in some court where they are knowledgeable about, as long as they are seeded initially with people who are knowledgeable about. Because if no one knows what they are doing, well, and you know what you're doing, you're not going to be more coherent with the final result. But as long as it starts with people who know what they are doing, each individual joining will only benefit if they also know what they are doing. So that's why also like seeding the system is important at the beginning of Kleros and the beginning of court, of having a few people who are honest and know some part of the topic. So we make sure of that when we are creating new courts.
Yeah.
We can do that for language court. So we only created language court for language. We knew we had some people who would be able to arbitrate in this language and would be interested in staking.
Yeah. Thank you for adding that. I should have clarified that. Like the incentives in Kleros for selecting jurors are better than whatever exists in off-chain selection. I guess that's what I clarify. It's not equally bad. It's actually the incentives actually exist for people to be subject experts, which is really cool.
There is an author called Richard Susskind who is like the world guru of legal innovation, and he finds this thing which is very interesting. So when people compare new models for like legal innovation, like big like kind of Kleros game theory systems or machine learning based system for automating a number of dispute resolution systems, so they tend to compare what's the new system to an idealized version of the legacy system, right? So, but this problem with Kleros is that if jurors collude, because that doesn't exist in traditional settings, right? There is a real good paper by Richard Posner that it's called "What Do Judges Optimize?" And judges they're not and he's a judge in the US, and he says judges don't have really good incentives to provide neutral resolutions to disputes that they have to handle, because they are paid the same. It doesn't matter what they rule. They don't even have to look at the evidence. You can't ever fire a judge for anything. So kind of sometimes I use this analogy. When Wikipedia started, people also were saying like this is never going to work. Like we already have Britannica encyclopedia, and an encyclopedia you have to have one guy who selects experts in different subject matters to write articles. Well, but Wikipedia showed that if you develop a good mechanism design, then you can crowdsource the work. And kind of Kleros is kind of in the same. So all the FUD we had about Wikipedia, this is kind of the same FUD you have at Kleros. Because people, I guess, they don't trust crowds. Maybe with good reason, but if the mechanism design is okay, it's well constructed, then it can provide great decisions and great results.
Do we want to take any of the questions?
I think I'll just pose another one of my own, which is basically that you guys, if you could elaborate a bit more on proof of humanity. I know you did in the presentation, but isn't it kind of relevant towards these courts and selecting jurors at some point? I'm not sure about this. I'm personally not sure. So this is like a genuine question from my end.
Do you want to take it, Clement? Proof of humanity. I've spoken more than you, so I want to. You can do it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily relevant on like API3 partnership, but the idea of proof of humanity is to make a CB.
Just 1 second before you continue, Clement. I just want to add that if anyone wants to add any more comments or questions about this for this community call, please feel free to add them to the YouTube comment section or anywhere that the stream is being played right now, and we will take it up later if it's relevant. But yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Clement. You can continue.
Yeah. So coming back on proof of humanity, the idea is to make a CB resistant system where you want to avoid people from registering multiple times. So like classical blockchain, they do that by proof of work or proof of stake, where you have one unit of hash power is one chance to make a block, one token is one chance to make a block, or in Kleros is like some sort of pseudo proof of stake system where one token is one chance of being drawn, and it's good, it gets the job done, but it's not necessarily really fair and not necessarily friendly to new entrants. So the idea is to get one person, one something. So like something could be like one person, one vote. So you have the proof of humanity DAO, which is a one person, one vote DAO. Obviously, to make that practical, you can delegate your vote, but it's delegation, so you can always vote on anything you want. And if you don't vote, the vote of your delegate will count, but you can always vote. You have the UBI, which is one person will get one UBI per hour. So it's a token which I would argue has the fairest distribution possible. You have Gitcoin using it to determine if some matching, like quadratic funding, if you make fake account, you can get some advantage in terms of what your grant would be. So you want to avoid fake accounts or find them. So it's one of the tools which is used in Gitcoin to find people using tons of fake accounts. So I think it is quite interesting, and we actually got way more people registered than we were expecting, and now we have I think 5,000 registered and perhaps 1 more thousand waiting to be registered.
Thanks for the answer for that. Let me just see if there's any questions from the community that are relevant for this community call. There aren't really many that are specific towards Kleros and API3, but there are some for API3. So if you guys want to answer that, sure, go ahead. This one, I guess Dave want to answer, or if anyone else also wants to chime in, sure. At a macro level, how do the team members of the core business dev team define success? And you can read, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the beauties of being governed by a DAO is that each team has to put a proposal in for a certain amount of time for the goals that they look to achieve and how they met the goals from the previous proposal. And they have to prove this in a specific way, mention the exact things that they're looking to do. So on our GitHub, we have a repository that has details of all of the previous proposals of each team, where they list their goals for the next period. And we list this in 3-month periods and detail everything that we did in the previous 3 months. So broadly, from the business development point of view, currently our main focus is looking to find blockchains that we can integrate Airnode with, and looking to scope out the kind of early projects that are looking to use and to integrate Airnode-enabled APIs. But we're also making connections with other teams, and there's a lot more. But the best way of answering it probably is just, if you read the proposals, it gives you a good idea of both what we're planning to do and what we've done.
Thanks for that. So I guess the other question that Sasha want to answer was thoughts on Chainlink 2.0 and how it compares to API3.
Sorry, there was just like a really loud sound outside. So I actually read the Chainlink 2.1 white paper in full. It's really long. I think it's over 100 pages. I read it shortly after it came out, and I actually made an internal presentation just so everyone in API3 is kind of on the same page and knows kind of what Chainlink is developing. So I plan on writing a blog post that summarizes that presentation. So in short, I think it's quite a pivot. Like Chainlink 2.0 is quite a pivot, and the white paper is very, very high level in general. So it's hard for me to actually imagine what is going to be implemented. It's quite, I'll get into it when I actually write my blog post, but it's very high level, very general. And it's quite a pivot from Chainlink 1.0. And it makes me, I never felt like we were direct competitors in the first place, and Chainlink 2.0 kind of convinced me of that. They're focused on a lot of like almost like services for the blockchain. That's almost how I put it. Like a lot of the Chainlink 2.0 focuses on specific types of services, VRF. What's the thing where you prevent miners doing MEV? Fair transaction ordering or something like that. So the paper mostly focuses on these types of services and very much less on actually providing data, things like data feeds. So sequencing, yeah. So I think I'm just repeating myself, but it's quite a pivot, and I don't think it significantly overlaps with the kinds of things we do. Yeah, but I hope to write a bit more about it in the future.
Thanks for that, Sasha. Yeah, if anyone wants, I don't know if anyone else wants to answer this, but it was a pretty basic question about how Kleros and API3 are related, which was already covered before this. But in essence, Kleros,
I think that was covered sufficiently.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can always just go back earlier in the stream, I guess. With that, I don't think we really have any other questions to add that are relevant for this call. So we can close it over here. And I'd like to thank you guys for coming for this, especially you guys, Federico and Clement. This was really a fun call and also insightful in parts for the parts that I didn't know specifically for me. So yeah, I appreciate it, and thank you all for coming for this.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming, guys.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
It was great. Thank you very much.
See you.
Bye-bye, guys.